Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. You know what? You're Pedro, but I met you so many years ago. You for me are just Pete Lerma.
And I answered to both. I have people who've known me all my life as Pete, and other people call me Pedro. And what's interesting is when people ask or when people say my name, I
Mhm.
don't even think about did they call me Pete? Did they call me Pedro? I just respond. So it's totally fine.
That's so interesting what you say because it doesn't happen to you. For example, when I heard a message, it can be in English and in Spanish, and I listen, I process it, and then that was in English or in Spanish, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Like
good.
the brain processing.
Yes.
And so, Pete, you know what? I was let me tell. I'm gonna say who you are. Everybody knows you in my network, but coincidentally, I was speaking to a high school yesterday that a friend of mine invited me because has this group of bilingual students, and she wanted me to go and inspire them. She said, just go and talk, and just for them to understand the value of bilingualism. And I didn't think ahead of what was going to say because I like to feel it. So, but when I was speaking and I started remembering how my bilingualism helped me through my career, I was telling the story how I was in Timberley McLean, and then I was there for 6 years, but then I will drive downtown in Dallas and I will see the Richards Group building, and it was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could work there, but it's so American. They never gonna hire someone like me. And then they did hire me and all that. But I'm saying all that story because now that name in the building, in the big, beautiful building, is yours. So you have Lerma
Hmm.
in a building that we can see anytime that we go to downtown in the highways. And you come from Wichita Falls, which is a small city in Texas, where my husband is also. You guys went to school. So tell me about what means from you to grow up in a Mexican American family in Wichita Falls, Texas, and all of a sudden have one of the most iconic advertising agencies, independent agencies, and your name in the top of a building.
So it's a huge deal. First, I should say I saw your post this morning about speaking to those students, um, and it was great. The value of bilingualism, and you said, the Richards Group needed something, and I was uniquely qualified. You were uniquely qualified because you could speak in more than one language, and that
Mhm.
was a specialty that they needed. Um, and so anyway, I saw it. Congratulations, that was a great talk. Um, for me, I have always wanted to represent our community in a positive light. So to be where I am is an honor. It's a privilege. It's also a responsibility, and I'm learning that it's a responsibility because for a long time I would look for role models that came from our community, and there haven't been that many. And not to say that people aren't out there doing great things, and we are aware of them from time to time. But I think today we have more of a spotlight than they did in the past. And it's been really interesting to encounter people who see me as that role model because it's humbling. Um, but it does mean a lot. I had somebody send me a note, I think it was this morning, that she had been at a university giving a talk, and she met a young lady who was Hispanic. And unprompted, she said, "My dream is to get an internship at Lerma."
Oh, wow.
And so to hear those kinds of stories is pretty amazing. So with the Richards Group specifically, there's a story that I tell, which is the way I got their attention um, was to do something unconventional. I had a friend of mine take a picture of me in front of their building. So the building was in the background, and I had my hands up, and I mocked up a cover of one of our trade magazines,
Mhm.
Advertising Age, and I mocked up a headline that said, "Lerma joins the Richards Group, has the competition scrambling." And it ended up being a kind of a multi-page resume. So there was the magazine cover, and then you would open it up, and there was the cover letter and my resume. And that was, I think, the thing that got enough attention that got me the phone call that I was able to go in and interview and get the job. But I also remember driving through Dallas because I did grow up in a small town, not too far from Dallas. And if you wanted to go see a concert, if you wanted to go shopping for, nice clothes or see a sporting event, you came to Dallas. And so I remember seeing that building too. And I remember thinking it was kind of this unattainable
Right.
place, right? I had this vision in my head of people walking through the halls in there. It's kind of funny because the time period you have to consider. It was back when people wore suits to work. And so I had in my head that they were walking through the halls with briefcases and power
Mad
ties.
Men
Yes.
type of.
And so to be in the position that I'm in is really quite an honor. It is something that gives me pride, not for myself, but because I can represent the community. It gives me a lot of pride when my family, my father, my mother, my brothers, sisters say something, about the position that I'm in, or that they're proud of some accomplishment that I've made. It's important.
I love that story, and especially I love it happening to you, because I know you are one of the 5 people in my book, because through my career, you have been involved with me, next to me, in multiple, more than any other one person. We were co-workers. We pitched together many accounts
We pitched Advanced Auto Parts
Yes.
side by side, and we won that account.
Exactly. And you were you were the head of the digital department, and I was the one Hispanic
Right.
that they have hired. So then I left. You started Lerma, or Richard Lerma. You got me back from my job that I had and say, come on and come with me and let's pitch the Home Depot, which was a $53 million Hispanic account. And then I brought you to Avocado from Mexico, and then I was your client. So it was all that journey. But one thing that differentiates you from many, many people in the industry is that as successful as you are, you have your ego under control. And that's pretty admirable. And you see a lot of successful people in the industry having that kind of, big egos and stepping on other people to succeed. You have done the opposite. You have helped a lot of people. But that led me to a question: how you have been so successful, like crazy successful, all the things that you have done, being so kind.
I don't think kindness and success are mutually exclusive. I have seen where the opposite is the case. Somebody is, not very nice. They take advantage of people. And that's not anything that I ever want to do. And if it means that I will succeed less than that person, that's okay with me. My values are important to me. People are important to me. When people ask me a lot of times what I'm most proud of, I think they expect for me to say, oh, that we were in the Super Bowl, or that we were named Small Agency of the Year, or that, all of these kinds of things. And my answer is never any of those things. What I'm most proud of are the people, and some of the things that I've been able to see them accomplish in their lives, and to think that I've played some small role in helping them, in encouraging them. Sometimes it's just getting out of their way and letting them succeed,
Right.
and that's okay. That to me is what I thrive on, and so it's been kind of a natural thing for me. It's not something that I
Yeah.
have to think about. I think when you have your values kind of in the right place, things happen very naturally for
Which
you.
makes you a great role model, because I think that's the modern leadership way, and you have proved that it worked, and it works great. And just for context, in case somebody is that it doesn't know you, so Pete built and led the digital department of what it was the most successful large independent agency in the US at some point. Then you build the Hispanic capabilities of that agency, and then it became independent. You bought it, so now it's Lerma, and you went from 5 people to how many do you have now? 100?
150.
150 people with his name in the building. You have also a PR firm that you partner with, Edelman
Yes, Richard Edelman and Luis Miguel
and Luis Miguel
Messiano.
Messiano, another icon in the Hispanic marketing. And also, independent to all that success, you are a very admired and respected leader in the advertising industry. So now you can say what you were going to say.
Well, one thing I want to share, because I think it's important to allow yourself to be vulnerable. I think some of my groundedness comes from a little bit of insecurity. I see people who a lot of times have all the confidence in the world, and I wish that I had more of self-confidence. And I think that is something that keeps me grounded, and I'm okay with that. But there are times where I wish I believed in myself more than I do, or presented myself more confidently than I do. And so I share that just to say, you can live with insecurities and you can still accomplish things. You can succeed. You have to work to overcome those insecurities for sure, but it's doable.
I love you saying that, because I think people show the surface, and those insecurities actually prevent you from saying that kind of things that you're saying. But if I look at you from outside, you're super successful. You have professional success, financial success. You have a beautiful wife. Jennifer is amazing, and he has an amazing personality. So everything around you seems perfect. Why do you have insecurities?
It's not perfect. Jennifer's perfect. I'm not perfect. It's a lifelong, I think, set of insecurities. Some of it may be cultural. We're told a lot of times that Latinos won't speak up if things are not right for them. And I think so there's some of that. But there are other things that just in my life experiences have led me to shy away from certain things. And again, it's not anything terrible, and it's not debilitating. I share it just so that anybody else that's out there that might be listening that feels like, I'm not sure I could do this, or I'm not sure that I'm smart enough, or whatever, that you absolutely can.
Totally. That's where I appreciate so much you're saying that, because it's showing transparency to the rest of the people that is thinking the same way, and say it doesn't matter where you get. Insecurities are human. I have them. I'm not as vulnerable. I'm not ready for that. I'm saying, I know that is kind of the trend. I'm just not ready.
It's okay too. And trust me, I manage my brand. So, social media is really, I think, where a lot of that started. I remember early on in social media, I would travel someplace for business. I would be in a hotel room and I would take this beautiful picture of a skyline or of mountains or whatever it was around, right? And I remember later people telling me, you're always in such great places. Your life is amazing. And I remember telling them, I'm just managing my brand. You need to know that most of the time is, I'm traveling in a packed airplane. I'm in meetings somewhere without any windows. That was a moment that I was able to just capture and go, here's my life. But, there's a whole lot of work and blood and sweat and tears that goes into life that doesn't show up in that picture.
But that's a humility, because you can say, oh yeah, thank you, something like that. So speaking about the struggles, I remember, boy, you got me out of that job. I was just chill and having the great life, and you say, come over, let's pitch Home Depot. And it was, speaking about vulnerability, super stressful time, because it was a new agency trying to just take off, 5 people working and pitching a $53 million account, a new team, which is one of the most challenging things that can ever exist. I mean, it's challenging to get into a team that is structured. Imagine when everybody is a transplant from other places, and you had that challenge and responsibility to make it work, because that was like either, I don't know what you were thinking, but it's like, I make it or break it. So how was that difficult time, and how that prepared you for just manage one of the most successful multicultural agencies right now?
It was hard.
I know.
And you were there,
I know.
right? The way that came together was we won this big account, and we had a couple of other ones, smaller accounts at that time, and we needed to hire a lot of people to service that relationship. People came from different agencies, and we had come from a general market environment and culture, and there's a certain way that things are done within the general market agency, and it's different in a Hispanic agency. And so we had all these people coming from different cultures. I had come from a general market culture, trying to start a Hispanic agency culture. And so there was what I call a culture vacuum. Because we were not established, we didn't have norms of behavior, how we interact with our clients. And so everybody that came in had an opinion about what the culture should be, and there was clash. And I remember there were times when I thought, I've built a digital agency that lived in the general market, and now I'm trying to build an agency that is in the Hispanic market, and there's a lot of drama. And if this is what it means to build a Hispanic agency, I'm not sure that I want to do it. But I'm not a quitter.
Right.
And so I kept at it. The key to overcoming that was really to communicate what my expectations were of the culture that we should build. And when that happened, there were lots of people that said, that sounds great to me. I want to get on board. And there were people who didn't want to get on board, and that's okay too. They would thrive in a different kind of an environment, and that all resolved itself. And once we defined that culture, it really became self-sustaining. So people that come into the agency now observe a culture that they can contribute to. So I never want it to be stagnant. I never want it to be static, rather, that it never changes. People come in and I want their input, I want their thinking, I want their values to be imprinted on the rest of us. And I want the culture to evolve over time to the extent that it's, there are fundamentals that have to be there, right? It needs to be a positive, welcoming, inclusive, supportive kind of a culture. And so to me, as long as those fundamentals are in place, I love evolution. I love evolution in technology, in society, in an agency culture. I'm all about it.
I love everything that you're saying. It makes me think like so many things. You're talking, and I'm like visualizing the parallelism between immigration, immigrants coming into a country, and new people coming into your agency. And there's always a natural resistance of the people that has been there for longer to resist the new thinking. But if you don't embrace it, you get stagnant. So how do you manage? There's always tension. The tension never stops as long as you keep bringing new people. So how you manage that? You want them to bring their own culture to your culture to enrich it and keep enriching it. But then you have natural resistance. It could be great people, but they're going to have natural resistance. How you manage that to keep it healthy?
I think it's all about communicating your priorities. And so anything from new people, new thinking, technological evolution, things like artificial intelligence, we've talked about that before. I communicate a lot about the things that I want us to be paying attention to, embracing, innovating with. And I believe that creates a culture where people embrace change. I've always felt that way. Growing up in digital, I felt like I had to learn something new every day, or I was, going to take backward steps and become irrelevant. And so that mindset carried over into Richard's Lerma, exists within Lerma. And so I think the people that are there understand that that's what we're about. And so it creates a very receptive culture to change.
Now, speaking about you mentioned building the digital. I have seen you building from the digital space within a general market agency, which general market is questionable to say that is now 100% Anglo. General market became
Right.
multicultural. Then Richard Lerma was Hispanic, and now Lerma is a whole unique new thing because it's a real, true blend of cultures and Hispanics, multicultural. So you have pretty much, I wouldn't say redefine, I will say define what a true, really multicultural, forget about the word that has been used so much, is multiple cultures, relevancy.
Mhm.
We're talking about relevancy agency. So, how will you define today what is Lerma?
I talk about us as being a cross-cultural agency built on the foundation of multiculturalism. And so today, everything we do goes through a lens of multiculturalism. And it's not just Hispanic, although that's a core competency that we've had and we will continue to have. But we think about it from the perspective of the LGBTQ plus community, of the Black community, Asian Americans, and on, people with disabilities. So it's really important to us to really think about and honor and celebrate the differences among us. And I think when we do that, the work is going to be more relevant, not only to those communities, but to all communities.
Mhm. Yeah, because even if you are, let's say you have a client that is targeting the Asian American community only, that's fine. But understanding the context is so important because I think that Asian American that is receiving that message is also in a context that is multicultural.
Right.
So if you target that Asian American 100% from the Asian American perspective, you're missing so much of their context. So when you plan or your teams plan a campaign or strategy, because you are cross-cultural and multicultural, all that is considered even when you're targeting one specific demographic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we have a director of cultural fluency, and
Oh, nice.
she knows so much about different cultures, and she really helps us all land in territory that is considerate of many cultures. And what we found is that that makes for more effective work. The Home Depot is a longtime client of ours. And in 2024, they were recognized as the most multicultural brand in America by the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers. And I believe it's because of the kind of work we do for them, where we might be leading the work with an insight that's specific to a Latina home improver, a doer is what we call them.
Okay.
And the work and the creative work might be leading with Latinas. And yet it resonates with Latinos, it resonates with the general market and creates a very inspiring story. And what we've seen is that those pieces of work tend to test incredibly highly on the ANA's SIM testing. It's a cultural insights measurement tool that they have. And so when you do it right, it works.
And I love that role. Is that a new role in advertising or that's something that you created?
It's something we created, and it happened pretty organically. So ever since we launched the agency, we have been very focused on inclusivity. We have had a series of presentations within the agency. They're internal presentations, but things like inclusive language when it comes to the Black community, inclusive language when it comes to the Native American community. And we've learned so much. And she was one of the leaders of that movement for us. And so little by little, it just became apparent to us that we needed to actually carve out a role and that it could be a differentiating role for us as an agency. In fact, one of the things we put out recently was a white paper on brands being politicized. So brands don't often want to wade into politics, but they're being pulled into politics a lot of times by activists, as you might imagine. And so we put out this white paper that explained things that brands should be aware of, should watch out for, should be thinking through as they put new work out into the world to help prevent, some of that politicization that's happening. And so she has just an amazing breadth of knowledge, and it's a different perspective. Like I said before, that's not a perspective we had before. We brought her in. She had done a lot of work in politics. She had done a lot of work in the disabled community. And so she has these insights that have been really valuable to us
So
and to our
that's
clients.
a combination between her soft skills and her experience, basically, because imagine she didn't go and got a degree in cultural fluency.
Right.
And that's where talent make a whole difference. And it takes me to my next thing that I'm curious about, because if you wonder, what is that trait that make you so successful? I can tell you from my perspective is consistency. You're incredibly consistent. When you start something, you just build it. But it's also recognizing talent, leadership, but what combination of those skills do you think that make you so successful?
I think my empathy is an important part of it. Emotional intelligence. So understanding people, wanting to put them in a position where they can thrive. There's a book called Primal Leadership that I recommend a lot. And in the book, it talks about 4 characteristics of a great leader, a leader that has a lot of emotional intelligence. And the first characteristic is self-awareness. So I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And that takes a lot of work because we all have blind spots. And, even if somebody points out to you, Ivonne, you're not great at this, you psychologically come up with these defense mechanisms, and you say, well, that's because I don't get this opportunity, or the client doesn't give us enough budget or enough time, or whatever it is, right? We come up with excuses. And so you've got to be really honest with yourself about what those shortcomings are, strengths and weaknesses. I know myself. The next is self-management. So understanding my strengths and weaknesses, I'm going to work to position myself where my strengths shine and my shortcomings are somehow hidden or compensated for. The third characteristic is social awareness. So understanding the people around me, understanding their strengths and their weaknesses. And then the last characteristic is relationship management. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And relationship management is about, once you understand the strengths and weaknesses of the people around you, you can create partnerships, teams where the individual strengths are in the spotlight, and they're compensated by the other members of the team where there are some shortcomings. And when you do that, you're able to allow everybody to thrive, which is important. I've had people work for me before that had a different mindset, who felt like everybody needs to do things the way I do them, and this is the right way,
And what
and
happened
that's
to them?
frustrating to them. And I've had these conversations with them before. And the example that I'll give you is a creative leader who gives direction to a creative team, and if they don't come back with the exact solution that he or she had, they get frustrated. And to me, it's about empowering people to arrive at solutions that may not be the solution that I had in my head, but it's still a viable solution. And so I think it really is a lot about emotional intelligence and understanding how to put teams together that can thrive.
So did you learn that, or did you knew that from somewhere, or did you know that?
I feel like it was something that I knew inherently. I don't know if it was from watching my parents in the way that they interacted with people, or maybe peers early in life. But when I read that book, I remember thinking, I know this feels right. This feels like the kind of thing that I do. And once I understood that construct, it's something that I really began to embrace and to apply. So it became more intentional, where before it was more instinctive.
Because you were like groomed in an environment completely different. This is the way to do things. It's a leadership that is more demanding and I will say, yeah, they all kind of leaders. It's just you grew up there, but then you put in practice something completely different. Not only you survive, but you thrive, proving success. So when it was a moment when you felt inadequate because you were the way you are, but you see the successful people around you being aggressive, egotistic, self-centered. I'm not talking about any specific. I think that is a lot of the personality overall that we see in the industry, which is fine. It's just what it is. So when do you realize, when it clicked that, hey, I'm right and I can succeed being me?
I would say it took a while. There were many years where I kind of played the game, right? Like, this is the agency that I work in. This is the culture. These are the normative behaviors. Not that I was ever egotistical or rude to people. And I would say that didn't exist at a high level within that agency. But it was different. And I remember feeling like I need to conform in order to succeed in this environment. And it was a high performance environment. I always felt like, this is the insecurity coming through. I always felt like I had to work twice as hard to be half as smart as the other people in the agency, because they were really great, smart, talented, driven people in that agency. And so I did. I played the game. There came a point where I felt like I had accomplished enough. I had proven myself, and that I had an opportunity to do things differently, the way I thought. I think in any company, there are lots of people who think there are things that are great about this environment, and there are things that if it were up to me, I would do differently. And so there came a point where I could do some things differently, and I did. That's not to say that I didn't learn and that I didn't carry over a lot of the things that I learned in that environment. I did. And it was incredibly valuable, that experience. I was there for 23 years, and I was given lots of opportunity. I was trained to do things at a very high level. And I assign a lot of value to that. I have a lot of gratitude for that. But for sure, I wanted to do things my way. And when I got a chance, I started doing that.
Yeah, and by the way, just in case, I'm not saying that was happening in that agency in particular. I'm super grateful too. Like I say in my post, it gave me an opportunity it was a dream to go there, but it's different. It's a different culture. It was a very, I don't say, like you say, everybody was type A, most people, and it was their performance. And I realized that you don't need to be that way to be an overperformance. I have been an overperformance of my life, and I don't fit in that type of culture, but you change it. And what is surprising is not that you discovered that and you applied, is that you were able to change a system that was so ingrained. And a lot of people from the agency actually works in Lerma and is shaping Lerma culture, which is amazing. So before the next thing that I want to ask you, which is about how you combine your culture with the client's culture, but I don't want to forget to tell you that people in Wichita Falls love you. I went to, because like I say, my husband is also from there, so I go often, and any time that I go is like, because they see me with you in Facebook and stuff, and then, oh, Pete Lerma and Pete, everybody love you. One time you spoke at an event, and everybody was texting me like, oh, look, sending me pictures of you. So it's just so touching and so beautiful how you're not only leaving a mark in the marketing industry, like you say, your dad and your mom are so proud of you, but the whole city where you came, showing them how their value through you, and you have accomplished. So I love that, because it's people that I also love.
Thank you.
So I want to know, like, you and the people that work for you have such a defined values. And I know all of you, again, we're my agency for so long. I love all of you guys and have such a defined values, great hearts, very aligned in a positive culture of doing good. Actually, your tagline is
To channeling creativity for good.
exactly. What happens if you have a client that it doesn't meet those values and you still have to serve them? Or you're in a position right now to say, no, we're not going to pitch this account or whatever.
I feel like a lot of that takes care of itself. Either, as a client goes out to look for agencies, they don't contact you without doing a little bit of research on you.
Right.
And so chances are somebody whose values don't align with ours, they will recognize that pretty quickly. Looking at our website, you can kind of get a sense for what we're about. And so we probably don't get that phone call or that email. But there are times when we've been contacted and our response has been no. And that's important. I think we have to adhere to our values. We have to create an environment where people are proud of where they work. And if we were to take on a client that would compromise that, that could be devastating to the agency. So it kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, right. Because you're like on one hand trying everybody to thrive, to be happy, to actually creativity thrives when people is happy with the positive hormones or the hormones of positivity. The positivity have a room, and man, there's nothing that worse than a bad client that can ruin your entire life.
I agree. It's tough.
So, and how, speaking about creativity, we live in an industry where creativity is a commodity. Every agency is creative. I don't know any agency that is not creative, or it wouldn't be an agency, but there's different kind of creativity. And that's what I think when agencies match with brands. Some brands have a more conservative type of creativity. Some brands want to disrupt. So can you describe Lerma's type of creativity?
Well, we've recently been talking about some new positioning, and where we've landed, and this might evolve too, but where we've landed is permission to interrupt. And so we feel like, and it aligns also with channeling creativity for good. And I should explain that a little bit too first. Channeling creativity for good is where we defined our agency vision. So really the highest calling of the agency, the reason that we get up in the morning and come to work is to channel creativity for good. And that means several things. It means that we need to do good by our clients. Our clients all have performance metrics that they need to meet, and it's our job to help them meet or exceed those metrics. But it also means that when somebody encounters the work that we do, we want that encounter to, in one way or another, enrich their lives. And we talk about that in small ways and in big ways. We've talked about avocados from Mexico. If we can put a smile on your face, even if it's just for a moment, we believe that enriches your life. The Home Depot, if we can help you improve your home, we believe that that will enrich your life. And we do that through messages of value or utility that make it possible for you to take on that project. With the Salvation Army, we say, if we can get you to be more philanthropic, either with your time, your talent, or your treasure, we believe that that will enrich your life. And with the campaign for Jesus, the He Gets Us campaign, if we can get somebody to, stop for a moment, pay attention to the message that we've offered up, get them to consider wanting to live in the example of Jesus or just be a better person, we know that that will enrich your life. And in fact, that campaign is so powerful. We've had people reach out to us with messages of encouragement of how one of the messages that we put out there has, in one way or another, changed their lives, their perspective. We've even had people say, I was considering taking my own life, and I ran across the He Gets Us message, and that changed everything. And so channeling creativity for good can have real, tangible benefits. It can leave the world better than we found it, and that's important to us. And so when we talk about permission to interrupt, it means we need to earn permission to interrupt your life. Advertising can be an interruption. And so there's a value exchange that we expect as an agency. If we're going to ask you to pay attention to our message needs to provide you value in one way or another. Again, it could be that we put a smile on your face, but it could mean a whole lot more. And so that's really kind of the filter that we put all of our work through. And I think that does create a very positive culture of people who want to change the world for the better.
That's great. And that is so you, because on top of everything that you're doing with the agency, that is not a small job to manage a 150 people agency plus the PR agency that you're partnering with. But on top of that, you do a lot of volunteer work for several organizations. Can you tell me a little bit of everything that you're doing also to help the community, not only to help your clients, to help your employees, but on top of that, to help the community?
Giving back is something that's really important to me. I grew up in what I would say is a modest household. We didn't have a lot of money, and we didn't get a lot of things that we wanted as kids, just because we couldn't afford it. And there were times where we encountered difficulty, and the church was there to help us, or our school was there to help us, or an organization like the Salvation Army was there to help us.
Which is another of your clients, by the way.
Yes, and that means a lot to me too. But because of that, I have always felt an obligation to give back. Even when I couldn't give back monetarily, I felt an obligation to contribute my knowledge and my energy to the work. And so today I am on a number of nonprofit boards, the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. I'm on their foundation board, Catholic Charities of Dallas, Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I have been very involved in their Hispanic Gala, and I'm really proud of that work and how I've seen the Hispanic community come together and raise a lot of money for childhood cancer. And so there are lots of organizations, and in some cases I'm not even on the board, but I'm happy to be involved and contribute. Organizations like the Concilio, and so it's important to me, and I do feel an obligation, but it's also very gratifying. So it's not like I don't get something out of it.
Yeah.
It feels great to be a part of something.
Of course,
like
because of you, who you are, and what is important for you, and also you're involved in groups and that are actually impacting how Latinos are represented in the Cannes Festival, for example, which is, I love everything that you're doing above and beyond of just making money, which is incredible. And to end, because unfortunately we run out of time, but I don't want to not touch this topic because you run a multicultural agency. We live in a country of 40 million Spanish speakers. There's 600 million Spanish speakers in the world. We live in the communication industry. So our job is to communicate. And so you will think that anyone will think, yeah, speak more languages, the more the better, because we can communicate as a country and as a society with more people. Impact, if you communicate, you can impact. So how challenging it is right now, have that mindset and that responsibility of communicating in a context that reject or somehow penalize speaking another language.
It's tough, and you know where I exist, kind of on the political spectrum. But the truth is, so many more people embrace other cultures and other languages. From a pop culture perspective, it is valuable to speak multiple languages. Of course, from a professional perspective, it is, but even in pop culture, when music and fashion and film and art are being influenced by other cultures, the Black community really put its imprint on American culture for many, many years. And now we're seeing Latino culture do the same thing, and people are embracing it. And so I think there's probably a small percentage of people who reject that, who want to suppress that. But I think for the most part, it's going to continue to thrive. And from a business perspective, that's where growth is going to come from, is from multicultural audience segments. Whether you're talking about automotive, whether you're talking about beer and spirits, new home purchases, on and on and on. Growth is going to come. Growth is only going to come from embracing multicultural audience segments. And so I think it's kind of a loud minority that kind of creating that narrative right now. But I think over time we'll see that the influence is there. It's not going away. The Spanish language is going to continue to thrive and become. You were in your clip that I saw. You talked about the number of people in the world that speak Spanish. What was that number?
600 million.
Okay, that's not going away.
Right.
It's only going to grow.
Right.
And so we're here to stay. And I think within that there is opportunity for Latinos, and there's opportunity for businesses that embrace Latinos.
Absolutely. It's just like another group of consumers where you can speak to them in a very relevant way, what's not to like about.
Right.
Hopefully that message of the minority won't permeate, and it will give us time to continue where we left it.
Right.
Later.
And I'm on one other board, which is the Hispanic Marketing Council. And we recently put out a statement because we felt like as an organization, we need to stand up for our market, the Hispanic market, and remind people that it's an opportunity that they cannot ignore from a business perspective. But we also felt that it was important to say it's also the right thing to do. It's not just a great business opportunity, but it's also the right thing to do. And, a few years ago, companies were, kind of outwardly claiming, we embrace multiculturalism, we lift up Black voices in Black communities, we're going to work with minority-owned businesses and all of that. And I believe they were saying that because they felt like it's the right thing to do. And today, it's not only the right thing to do, but it is a business imperative. Yeah.
Well, now is an interesting time because we're going to know who was really meaning that, and who was just going with the flow to have some gains. And the consumers are smart, and the talent is smart. So you will know where to gravitate towards. So those that are transparent and were authentic, just caring about that community in an authentic way. Well, thank you so much for coming, Pete. I always say one of the greatest satisfaction of this podcast is that it allows me to reconnect or connect with people that were so busy all the time, but it gave us an undivided attention, 1 hour to get to reconnect again.
Well, thank you for having me. And keep doing what you're doing. You're an inspiration to all of us. I know you're an inspiration to Latinas, but you're an inspiration to so many more people. So
thanks
for having me.
Thank you. Likewise. Bye.